one thing I always remembered about those blocks where CHOP was at is that was, for those of you that aren't familiar with Seattle geography, that was a big nightlife area.
Yeah.
So bars, venues, things like that. And when I'd be driving around there on a typical Saturday night, you'd have fights, people just falling in the road, shit-faced drunk, people get, again, there'd be shootings, there'd be, all sorts of this other stuff. But what I found crazy about that is that whenever there's chaos in the name of business, society just kind of turned a blind eye to it.
Mm-hmm.
But God forbid anybody, near the protests happens to break a window of a local business. All of a sudden, it's anarchy.
I mean, it's
and in the name of when you're protesting, you're fighting for human rights, again, but it's God forbid there's any chaos, in the circle of that. All of a sudden, oh, that's a bad thing.
I mean, that's been something that, any community that's been fighting for justice and equity, especially, with the history of Black folks and indigenous folks and capitalism in this country, there has always been a prioritization off of how to monetize us rather than how to free us.
Absolutely.
There's always been more of a focus on how we are calling for justice rather than acknowledging that we are asking for justice. And that's what it is. It's always talking about how Colin Kaepernick is being disrespectful to the national anthem. It's always how Martin Luther King was, disrupting traffic. It's always about what people are experiencing that are in power, not what people are experiencing when they're fighting for their lives. And that attention to focus is one, insightful for recognizing whether or not you are actually about the liberation of oppressed peoples.
Yeah, or to me, even whether you just believe in American values, because if you truly believe that this is supposed to be the country with liberty and justice for all, where everybody has equal protection under the 14th Amendment, the right to due process and things like that, people being treated differently by law enforcement and the justice system purely based on how they look, that should bother you.
I mean, and that's the other thing. It's just, because America has had such a long history of murdering people that look like me.
Yeah.
We're so destigmatized from it and so desensitized to it that watching a man being murdered for 8 minutes straight does not activate people the same way that seeing a window being broken at a fucking Target. That is baffling to me, because this is a human life that you care less about because you don't want to be uncomfortable with how policing functions and how our government functions, versus seeing a corporation that is responsible for abusing people in the name of having surplus profits because you think that that property is more valuable than a human life. And if that is your initial response and you're not asking why that's your initial response versus seeing and knowing that so many people that are Black and brown have been murdered, that is appalling. And you need to really sit down and look at yourself and hold yourself accountable and educate yourself, because we have been going through this for 250 plus years. If you are not privy to it and not looking at it and not understanding it, it is because you're not putting the work in. So do it, because you're very fucking lucky that people that look like me are calling for equality, equity, and justice and not fucking revenge. That's a key thing. Black people and brown people are inherently peaceful, and we've been asked and forced to be inherently peaceful for all those years since America's conception. And so the concept of people telling us that we're protesting the wrong way or we are activating ourselves in our communities in the wrong way is not only disregarding what we have been through, but also disregarding your complacency in the larger scheme of all of that. Because if you think that you're not involved just because you look a particular way or you've had an experience a particular way, it means nothing. Because in the larger scheme, this is what oppressed communities are going through. And you are either helping to make sure that they are not going through that anymore by identifying yourself and your place in your community, or you're being silent and complacent and allowing it to continue happening. There's no bystanding here. You've always had to pick a side. Just will you pick the fucking right one?